All right, everybody. So, in the last part, I focused on distinct policy differences between Trump and Biden as it pertains to leftist ideology and the ideas that I hold. Um, and in this part, I'm going to basically cover why leftists should support Biden while critically through the process of election and inauguration. So, obviously, the election has already happened. We know that Biden was the decisive winner. I can put an electoral map up right here. I think it was 306 to 232. Trump's lawsuits are being tossed out everywhere. It's pretty decisive that he's won, but there might be some funny business attempted before the inauguration in January. So I believe that as leftists, socialists, pretty much whatever, we should support President-elect Biden in this transition until inauguration. So, socialist avenues of change function best when working under the bourgeois democracy, and it provides the most direct, gradual avenue for us to change the society as we wish it. So, essentially, what I'm trying to say here is, under capitalist bourgeois democracy like we have now, it's quite easy for us to start to kind of mold the minds of people around us and to try to allow them to see that what we believe would probably be best for them too. The things we advocate for, like universal health care and $15 minimum wage or a livable wage, that is actually quite popular with many American citizens. And obviously, as we allow us to work through it, we can liberate workers from the shackles that they have right now under the current system, where they're just in a perpetual poverty cycle and living paycheck to paycheck. Excuse me. I know many people who are just living paycheck to paycheck with really no money to spend. Housing in the United States today costs approximately like 50% of people's income on average, and college, obviously, the prices have gone up immensely since, when our parents and when our grandparents went to school. I'll post a graph about that here. Many people have thrown around the term fascist when talking about Donald Trump. And rather unfortunately, these claims actually have merit. There's going to be a study that I'm going to link for just like general purposes in the description of this video and also in my bibliography for my essay. That states that somebody who is rather acquainted with the workings of fascism and the requisites has said that Trump has quite a few of the prerequisites for fascism. The first one of these that I'm going to cover, which is one of the most alarming to me, is the delegitimization of the media. And now we all know that Trump has been a consistent hater and kind of a Debbie Downer in terms of media since 2016. And he's worked tirelessly to delegitimize the reputation of the media and all of the journalists that work there to get us the truth. He's often called these organizations fake news or the lamestream media. Obviously, kind of childish, but he often does these to news organizations that don't work in his favor, such as like CNN or even NPR, New York Times, the list goes on. These attacks have extended in recent times after the election to those at Fox News. Trump has actually stated that he's going to pull away his supporters from Fox News and create his own news outlet. Now, this is because the Fox hosts and everybody at Fox has kind of been distancing themselves a little bit from Trump and his campaign because of the baseless accusations of voter fraud that have come out of their camp since the election. They kind of want nothing to do with that, so they're pulling back a little bit. Nowadays, Trump tends to favor news such as like Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, those who kind of support the cult of personality built up around Trump and report almost directly to him in the sense that they love him and they report on him positively most of the time. Now, also, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown his dissatisfaction with science. President Trump has shown time and time again that he does not respect science or his closest advisors. and he is willing to ignore science for political gain, or kind of use like the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine. He stated that it might not go to New York because of political things, which obviously is not good. Trump has shown time and time again he's going to ignore science for politics. He has repeatedly attacked the work of Dr. Anthony Fauci for his coverage and work during this pandemic. Fauci has been essentially the only one who is willing to stand up to Trump at this time about things that you should and shouldn't do. Trump has gone on multiple times to attack Fauci's credentials and his character, stating that Fauci told everybody to not wear masks at the beginning of the pandemic, which he did say don't wear masks, but that was only because there was not enough PPE to go around for all the frontline workers, such as nurses and doctors, which obviously takes precedent over somebody who's going to be quarantined in their house like I am right now. He's been repeatedly trying to undermine the authority of scientists until it works in his favor. He stated multiple times now that Pfizer and Moderna have been working very closely with his administration. Now, this contrasts sharply with the actual news that's come out from Pfizer saying that Trump only had something to do with the pandemic, like with this response, because he promised to buy like $3 billion worth of vaccines from Pfizer if they were to finish it. And personally, the next part, the scariest element of American fascism that I believe Donald Trump is currently cultivating is going to be his cult of personality. Now, as I mentioned before, there are smaller media outlets such as Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, who they seem to like idolize Trump in a way, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. Trump is a definite populist. He appeals to the people that feel disenfranchised by the two major political parties. We saw this in 2016 when he ran against a slew of establishment Republicans, such as John Kasich, who we mentioned in the first part. Maybe I didn't, but we mentioned John Kasich. And all of these establishment Democrats, or Republicans rather, feel like Trump, they feel cheated because he's just such a populist and they're wrong. Trump is a populist, as I mentioned. He attempts to kind of appeal to the emotions of the American public. And oftentimes these emotions are fear and hate. And we learned in political theory that fear is the passion should be reckoned upon. There's also that funny Michael Scott quote, I want people to fear how much they love me, But realistically, Trump appeals to the fear that a lot of people have of immigrants and people that don't look like them. This is obviously a very scary proposition because fear is one of the strongest, if not the strongest emotion, which is why we see a lot of Trump supporters who say awful, awful things about their outgroups. And we learned a little bit about this in the Uncivil Agreement book that we read earlier in the semester. There's a large portion of the Trump fan base that only swears their loyalty to him and not the GOP as a whole. We kind of saw this in effect when Trump attacked war hero, veteran, and Arizona Senator John McCain. Trump said that he was not a fan of John McCain, and John McCain started to receive quite a bit more hate than he had previously because of Trump. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the historically conservative and Trumpish Fox News has been not reporting favorably to Trump lately. So he, as I said, is planning on taking away their voter base or their viewer base and allowing them to kind of just fizzle out. He wants to kill Fox so that he has a Trump, like a Trump sympathizer media station again because, Fox News has not been supporting him through his voter fraud accusations. The cult of personality that Trump has cultivated around himself is a huge factor in the claims of fascism, as I mentioned. He has an army of seemingly malicious supporters. We've seen many terrorist groups, domestic terror groups, and many just awful groups endorse Trump or work on the behalf of Trump. We see this with all the Proud Boys, who Trump refuses to condemn. He just said, stand by. This is obviously a very scary factor because it opens the possibility, while not necessarily prevalent, that his supporters would act violently for him, which is an obvious issue. Yeah. Also, Trump is a militarist. He has not hesitated to threaten to send the National Guard in, nationalize the National Guard, or send in unmarked federal agents to cities like Portland when they were having their protests over the summer. He did this and then received extreme backlash, and it took about a month and a half for him to withdraw the federal agents, which were unmarked, by the way. They were literally kidnapping American citizens off of the streets and just taking them. It's literally 1984. This is Orwellian. He's a militarist, and it's scary. He's a hyper-nationalist. He appeals to the golden days of America, which we can see with his Make America Great Again slogan. But to that, I raise the question, why haven't you done it yet? You had a majority in Congress for 2 years. Why didn't you do anything meaningful? Make America Great Again just seems like it's a scam. And I wish people could realize that. Trump has all of the prerequisites of fascism, and he is very dangerous to American democracy, as we know. Thanks, guys. I'll be back for part 3.